You know what I really, really like about this podcast that we're doing? People could tie it up with what happened before in our other podcast. Remember we did the Matthew Perry murdered. Was he murdered or not? And so now when you watch back on that, we talked about, like, why did I talk to Brooke Mueller? You know, Charlie Sheen's ex.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's making sense. They were in rehab together. And this person that basically sold the ketamine to Matthew Perry, the ketamine queen, they call her, she was in rehab and best friends with Brooke Mueller. How insane is that? So Brooke Mueller's friend, broker of the ketamine that killed Matthew Perry, was connected to Brooke Mueller. She's
so
the
Brooke
one that
Mueller just let the cat out of the bag and snitched on everybody.
She had to.
Basically,
she had to.
I get it.
They were in rehab together, and she basically gave the information saying, "Yeah, I do know it was the broker for the ketamine for Matthew Perry," and it just trickled down from there.
Listen, where's your drink? Because this is episode 20. So I brought a little bottle, and I know you've got something in there undisclosed, and I'm going to pour something undisclosed in here.
It's a nice little ice cube you have there.
Check 1, 2.
What is that you got?
Oh, this is a big high-volume ice cube for maximizing surface area to pour over the, in this case, Scotch Oban brand.
Is that a special ice cube? I'm being serious.
It is, yeah. It comes. We have little rubber templates. You pour the water in. The ice cube looks
Regular
beautiful.
ice cubes are no longer good enough?
I like the spheres better.
All right.
Yeah, you know.
It visually looks amazing. Let me tell you. Can't.
Dude,
Cheers.
episode 20. This is fun.
Cheers.
And I want to drink a toast to it.
Yeah,
So-
but also a serious toast to the loss and to the memory of Matthew Perry. I watched him for many years on Friends.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I loved his delivery of the character. He was basically born to do that character. All the cast and crew, I think, were born to do their part. So I want to raise my glass and say I'm sorry for the death of Matthew Perry, to his parents who were still alive, and I can't imagine have a grieving son being buried. So I'm sorry to Mr. Perry and Mrs. Perry.
Here, here.
May the gods rest his soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He made a ton of people laugh.
Yeah, he did. And, what's sad is that if you want to get right into it, these people, Salvador Plasencia, Jasmine Sanga, who was the ketamine queen, they all went into a conspiracy basically to juice this actor up as much as possible, to get him as much ketamine as possible. And they even said callous things like, I wonder what this moron is willing to pay. Just to show you the severity and the callousness of a medical doctor, Tony, a doctor that took the Hippocratic Oath to not do any harm to the patient, right? These are the doctors that, at least, I don't know about you, I am very respectful and appreciative of doctors. And to think that a doctor could do this to a patient for money, for $50,000 to kill somebody, and the doctor knows, Plasencia should have known that this person would have been killed. That's really sad.
So five defendants are named, right?
Five defendants are named.
You mentioned our earlier episode on this. When we did it, I feel like we were just asking the question a little bit rhetorically, but you were also sort of making a prediction that, hey, I feel like there could have been some illicit activity in the supply of this narcotic to Matthew Perry. In which case, was it murder? Was it some level of criminal culpability? First, second degree, whatever. Here we are now, I don't know how many weeks later, and it is 5 defendants that have been charged. 2 of them are doctors.
Yes.
One of them is ketamine queen. She's like supposedly a supplier, the drug dealer.
Yeah, Jasmine Sanga.
Then there's a personal assistant who was probably in the house with Matthew Perry making it all happen. And then who's the 5th?
There's Chavez, Dr. Chavez, who was the person that was supplying the ketamine to Dr. Plasencia, who was the person administering the ketamine. So you had 2 doctors and one live-in, I guess they call him a personal assistant, live-in personal assistant. You have the ketamine queen, and then you have one other drug broker to the ketamine queen.
Sort of like a acquaintance.
An acquaintance or a friend, yeah. And
who kind of helped broker him to the ketamine queen.
Yeah, and the person that was living with Matthew Perry was Kenneth Iwamasa.
Yeah.
And I guess what's strange about it was he was actually giving the injections to Matthew Perry. One time they went to a parking lot in Long Beach on a Wednesday, and they started administering like a drug addict, like a junkie. They were giving him the 60 milligrams or whatever he was taking of ketamine, And then he went back home and took more ketamine. Basically what happened was now a lot of the things have been uncovered. So in our first podcast, I wondered, why are they interviewing Brooke Miller? Why? Now we know they're interviewing Brooke Miller because she was in rehab with Matthew Perry and with the ketamine queen.
So we think maybe he met this lady, the ketamine queen, in rehab.
Yeah, or the ketamine queen, either the ketamine queen was there or the ketamine queen's broker was there. Somebody connected to the ketamine queen. And basically, frankly, I think Brooke Mueller was the one that gave the information to the ketamine queen about Matthew Perry, if I'm not mistaken. But she already met with the agents, and the agents talked to her, so she's absolved. I want to be clear, she's absolved of any liability.
She just gave information.
She gave information.
And the law did what it's supposed to do, which is they investigated. They probably put some pressure on her, or maybe she volunteered it, but they put her in a position where she probably had no choice but to come clean.
Yes.
At least just to say, look, I do know who it was. It was this person, and they spoke together at the not at the clinic, but at the rehab. Can we just go back one sec, because you brought up doctors, and it's kind of shocking to think that they could be corrupt, but it's a good eye-opener for all of us, just to always remember that in any profession, in any group of people, there's going to be the corrupt ones, whether they're surgeons, doctors, lawyers. Our next podcast we're about to do is about a super lawyer formerly who's now fallen from grace for corruption. So we got to remind ourselves nobody is above it. Power corrupts, money corrupts. And yeah, you're right. 50,000. Like, is it enough to really be corrupted? I don't know what was going through this guy's mind or what was happening in his life.
Money. And by the way, this has been going back to Elvis. This has been going on. Elvis died of overdose of opiates, and he had things that were prescribed to him that would kill a horse.
See, and that's the thing,
Michael
right?
Jackson also got killed by his doctor that was getting propofol, and he was prosecuted for voluntary manslaughter for the death of Michael Jackson.
Does it complicate it? Does it complicate it that in all these cases, the person is probably literally begging for this drug?
No, because in fact, in the Matthew Perry case, he begged his doctors that he went to the clinic for depression for more ketamine doses, and they said no. That's why he went out and got the illegal doctors. There's always somebody.
He is begging for it.
Of course, he's a drug addict. But
he's a drug addict.
But as a doctor, you should be able to say no. But the thing is,
black market.
There's always a doctor in a black market that's willing to juice somebody up for money.
Was this L.A., Los Angeles?
Yeah, I was in Los Angeles.
So right here in L.A., there's a bunch of black market doctors that we could go to anytime.
If you're Michael Jackson, if you're Matthew Perry, sure, you could get somebody to get you drugs. I mean, for any money. And it happened with Conrad Murray with Michael Jackson, and it happened with Elvis. It probably happened with Prince, who died of an overdose on drugs. These doctors are very open-handed, let's just say, when it comes to delivering drugs to their clients, because they're good clients. They don't necessarily do it for the power, by the way. It's not only for the money. It could be for other things.
And it's painkillers often.
Mostly painkillers.
Tom Petty didn't have a doctor, at least not when he was on the road. And sadly, he had to go to the street. He had some guitar tech go, hey, I know a guy somewhere out of state.
That's what happened in Perry's case, too.
And then he died. That's sad.
That's what happened in Perry's case.
Is it better to have a doctor? Is it better to just legalize this completely and have it just be administered? I mean, if the patient wants it, why not give it to him?
Different podcast. That's a completely different show. And by the way, it didn't work in Canada. They're now making it illegal again, just so you know. They legalized every drug.
Portugal legalized everything.
I don't know about Portugal, but I know Canada's going back now, and they're making it illegal because it didn't work. They thought it would be, if they promoted it, that people would do less. The opposite happened.
When I look at the Canadian government, with due respect, they're just not doing a great job of running things. So I look at them as the last litmus test I would look to for how to run something. I'm not sure Portugal is a beacon of democracy either, but they did legalize every drug.
Yeah, I don't know
about
the
reduced crime, from what I could tell in the case. They reduced crime, and they kind of brought it away from the black market. Anyway, back here in LA, we're in the black market.
Right.
Matthew Perry really wants this ketamine. How sad. How much pain was he in? I mean,
I don't understand it. From the perspective that he apparently beat his addiction, and then all of a sudden he goes into depression. Fine, you going into depression, but why do you have to go straight to ketamine?
What was he in rehab for?
Alcoholism. He had an alcohol problem for many years, and I think painkillers. But he beat that according to his biography or a book that he wrote.
So alcoholism was the main culprit for him
originally, but then he slipped into depression. I'm assuming because he was maybe clean, and he was having a tough time with it. But again, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to make prescriptions. But it just sounds to me, if you beat the system, if you beat your drugs in your system, go work out, go run, go on a health kick. Why do you go to ketamine directly? That doesn't make any sense to me. But whatever, I'm not critiquing the guy, but he went to ketamine and he didn't get ketamine to the volume that he wanted. He kept wanting more and more because there's a tolerance rate. At some point, you build tolerance, right? Resistance.
You got to go higher and higher doses.
More and more. So
you're attacking your body's dopamine system, serotonin levels, higher and higher degree.
Yeah.
How ironic that he went to rehab and met essentially a drug
That's
dealer.
very common. My clients tell me they meet drug dealers inside the rehabilitation because they're also drug addicts sometimes. Wow. So they get connected with people like, oh yeah, I used to be former addict, but then when push comes to shove, if you've got a A-list actor that's looking for something, like this lady Jasmine Sangha, she provided medication, or I should say ketamine, to Matthew Perry. And then we know it was so stupid. I don't know, these people are so dumb. They think by texting each other, delete all the messages, like it's a James Bond movie. All of a sudden, all the data is going to just disappear from the earth.
When did people do delete? When did so there's a couple doctors, a couple middlemen. Who started deleting and when?
The day after they found that on the news that Matthew Perry died, the ketamine queen text, I don't know who it was. It may have been Chavez or the other people saying, delete my messages. And of course, let me tell everybody, that's not possible to do. Your messages are there for a very long shelf life on the internet, probably up to a year or more. So they grabbed the cache files, CACHE, which are basically cookies. And take a look at this. I don't know if you can see this. Delete our message. So on October 28th, and I'm showing you now, oh, by the way, this is not accessible to the internet. I have something in my hands that's probably gold. All right, this is the indictment for the Matthew Perry's death.
You have the actual indictment.
I have the actual indictment.
Which is cool to have on the show.
It's not available yet to the public because this is a document that's only available to federal criminal defense attorneys with access to the federal database. And again, I'm not disseminating any information, but I'm letting you know I've reviewed it, and that's where I'm getting all my information. So it's straight from the government's mouth.
It's first-person information.
Yes.
Or it's straight from the source.
Yes. And according to this, the ketamine queen on October 28, 2023, freaked out, and she used a
expletive,
an app called Signal, which people think it's safe, which it's not.
Really?
All right? Yeah, it's not.
Everybody thinks it's encrypted end to end.
Well, you'll learn it's not encrypted because the government has all the conversations right here. So
it's over.
So there you go. So lesson learned. So Sangha thinks she's going on this Signal app, thinking it's completely legit. Nobody's listening to it, and she says, "What does that say over there? Delete all our messages."
Delete all our messages.
Yeah. So they got that.
Delete all our messages, end quote.
Yeah, delete all our messages. And then they started bouncing ideas, basically saying that, we're in the clear because, we weren't injecting it. It's basically the fall guy is going to be Iwamasa.
Now, this brainstorming session they had about how they're in the clear over text. Is that going in to incriminate them now further?
Yeah. So all of this stuff is going to be used to incriminate them.
Come on, guys.
That's why they're toast. That's why Plasencia is going down, and Miss Sangha is going to go down.
How many people are in?
Javzine Sangha is going to go.
Is this just a text group of two doctors, a middleman?
So the main players are Javzine Sangha and Dr. Plasencia, Salvador Plasencia. And let me tell you why they're doing this, okay? They're doing this for one reason and one reason only. They're sending a message. And in fact, Martin Estrada, who is the AUSA, the American United States Attorney for Central District, who coincidentally, actually, I was sitting next to him the day before he announced this. I was sitting right next to him at the Tom Girardi trial, which I'm watching. I was sitting right next to the guy. Mm-hmm. So next day he's on TV, is making an announcement. And he even said, we're sending a message that we're going to hold you accountable. So they're telling all these drug people across California, if you deal drugs and it results in a death, we're going to come at you hard. These people are somebody's looking at 100 years on one of these counts.
These 5 that have been arrested now? Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
who are these two doctors? Why do this? And then was it really 50,000
To
or
make
was
money.
it 500,000 and we
It's
don't know about it?
$50,000, and the answer is to make money. It was
they
Chavez, Dr.
not-
Chavez, and Dr. Plasencia.
These two particular doctors, are they sort of untraditional doctors in the sense that they didn't have a thriving practice with other clients? They're sort of just there to do these one-off money grabs? I don't know.
I don't know the answer to your question, but I will tell you that Michael Jackson's attorney was charging, I think, $100,000 or $50,000 a month to give him propofol. So there's always
the doctor.
Dr. Conrad Murray.
Yeah.
So there's always a price to somebody skirting the law, even if it's a doctor, unfortunately. I'll give you another example. If you get a famous person, let's just say it's Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks wants ketamine, he'll find somebody to get him ketamine. He'll find it might be $100,000 a month, it might be $50,000, but there'll be a doctor that's willing to do it. And that's a sad part. There's always greed always trumps what is supposed to be right, I guess.
Do you think from your experience these two doctors knew that what they were doing was criminal and that they were up for major punishment if they got caught? Or
Yes, because according to the indictment, it says that injecting ketamine, according to the indictment, needs to be with proper safety equipment. Failing, and you need to monitor the victim, and you need to also take notes. You need to be present. This was all not done. And
None of it.
It says here the doctor knows better than that. You just don't inject and run.
And I guess
You have to inject and monitor and stay. And at least, you know what's interesting? At least Conrad Murray did that. When Conrad Murray killed Michael Jackson, we were all, just shocked. I was out of my seat. I said, how can a doctor do that? But look, let's go back now. Conrad Murray, doctor, he's wearing a suit and tie while watching Michael Jackson, monitoring him. That wasn't done in Matthew Perry. We're cursing out Conrad Murray, but if he had that kind of care, if Conrad Murray was watching Matthew Perry, he'd be alive, sad to say, even though he killed Michael Jackson. The only reason that Michael Jackson died, sadly, is because Dr. Murray had to go to the bathroom and urinate. Urinating caused Michael Jackson's death because while he was gone, he went into a cardiac arrest, and Murray wasn't there. With Perry's case, nobody's there to begin with. The guy injects him, the Dr. Plasencia injects him, and lets the living assistant go monitor and watch and inject
gets
Matthew
lazy.
Perry.
He's like, you're not paying me enough to sit there and watch you. Terrible.
Which is terrible. And that's going to go against him when he's sentenced. And that's why they're going after him. They're trying to send a strong message. The same thing happened with Anna Nicole Smith. The doctors were prosecuted for giving them medication as well. But in that case, and in Anna Nicole Smith, who was a former Playboy, I think, a model, the doctors were found not guilty because I believe even though they were giving Anna Nicole, it wasn't foreseeable that she was going to be abusing the drugs. And I take a little bit of a deference to that case. I think if it was tried again, they'd be in trouble because now there's a little bit more awareness that these doctors are doing this.
Was there any front to what they were doing? In other words, was there some organization like Ketamine Plus that they were using to give him this and billing through, or was it straight up cash under the table, not documented anywhere, like admitting that it's illegal?
The answer is they were paying cash to the ketamine queen, and the ketamine queen was getting it from two people. One was called a master chef, and the master chef was the one that was
under the table.
Super under the table. We don't know the master chef is yet, and there's one other one. I think it's called the surgeon or something. She gives a name of the guy that's creating this, or the magician.
So she's getting it from them, but how are the doctors involved?
They're getting it through her. At the end, they're getting it through the ketamine queen because she's getting it legally, and there's nowhere else to get it from. They're using their prescriptions. They're maxing it out, and they're using somebody else, another person's name. So I'm using your name as the doctor. I'm saying I need it for Tony, but Tony, you're not getting it. It's Matthew Perry that's getting it. So they ran out of names, I guess.
So there's a prescription involved?
There was originally a fake prescription, and that's why the mailing service. Remember, I asked, why is the U.S. Postal Service involved?
Yep.
I thought he was ordering it online. They were using the U.S. Postal Service is because they use an application to apply for ketamine with the DA through the Postal Service. Does that make sense?
With a DA, no.
The DA has to be notified every time you ask for permission to use drugs like ketamine.
And they did that?
And they did that.
So they kind of tried to be legitimate in sourcing this ketamine for Matthew Perry.
Yes, initially, but they ran out because they was asking for a lot. And what do you do when you don't have the source to get the rest, you go to illegal
I got
sources.
you. So even these
they ran out. And
Even these two doctors that are charged, you're saying they began with a legitimate channel and then went to the Queen?
Yes.
Wow.
In fact, look at this. It says on September 30th in a text message with Chavez, who's Dr. Chavez, and Plasencia, they discussed how much to charge the victim. I wonder how much this moron will pay. Let's find out. And then they filled out over here. You could see
Is that
they
text?
they filled out a fake. Well, that's through the text, but the rest is filled out through a fraudulent prescription in the name of VB without VB's knowledge or consent. So they originally were filling out fraudulent prescriptions and getting them, but when that avenue ran out, they had to go completely get illegal drugs through the ketamine queen.
Got it.
Who had access to it.
Got it.
And Matthew Perry was taking the equivalent of 60 milligrams of ketamine a day, the equivalent of 1 gram. So my understanding is it's like taking like 30 grams or 30 pills of ketamine, really strong. But again, it's building tolerance, so he needs more and more and more.
30 pills?
The equivalent of 30 grams of pills. He took 30 milligrams or 60 milligrams of pills. It was a very, very high amount. And on top of all that, he was taking lozenges, ketamine lozenges that were prescription lozenges that you could actually put in your mouth and get a ketamine effect. That was also meant for VB. And
I mean, on some level, he's just going to any extreme to either feel something or not feel something. I'm not sure which. If he's trying to just numb pain or if he's just trying to spike some kind of feeling in his brain because of all the depression. You're talking about a guy who's lived about the highest of highs you can in life, being a huge television star, known by everyone, loved by everybody, right? And imagine the lows that accompany that when you sort of come back from that or take a step back.
Well, the problem is when you take a drug, whether it's alcohol or any drug, and you get really happy with it, the opposite happens when the drug wears off.
Did you say alcohol?
Yeah, alcohol. So when you go up, you also go down, right? At some point, you go down, and what happens is ketamine does the same thing. You crash. So Elon Musk called ketamine, or was it Elon Musk, or was it? Yeah, Elon Musk called it a happiness drug, and Matthew Perry said it was the equivalent of being hit in the head with a happy shovel. So obviously, it produces a lot of endorphins that causes you to be happy. But then the crash is bad. So obviously if the crash is bad, he doesn't want to feel that. So now, next, he's doing more and more. He wants another hit, another syringe injection, which makes him feel better. And the dosage goes up, and then his crash comes down. And it's a vicious cycle of going up and down and up and down. And eventually, it could cause the death in the sense that it could cause cardiac arrest because it's the same amount of toxins that you put as an anesthesia. You're putting basically anesthesic levels inside your system. Does that make sense?
It's totally scary. Now, with these doctors, they prescribed him way too much, and they used other people to prescribe him even more.
Right.
Then they went to the Queen illegally in the black market, got him the stuff. But did he abuse even their instructions?
Yes.
Did he go even above and beyond?
Yes.
Is that their defense? Are they going to say, look, we fucked up, but...
Well, they can't say that because he's a doctor and he knows better. So he can't say...
For sure. But we also didn't tell him to take that much.
That's not going to work. Yeah. It's not going to work. They're gonna hear that on October 12, 2023. Just to give you an example. They're going to say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Dr. Plasencia injected Matthew Perry with a large dose of ketamine that caused Matthew Perry to freeze up and his blood pressure to significantly spike. And defendant Plasencia told his in-living personal assistant, Iwamasa, something to the effect of, let's not do that again. So what does that mean? They had noticed that this was messing up Matthew Perry. So even hypothetically, if the doctor said, I didn't know he was going to use that much, he already has noticed that Matthew Perry not only wants more than what the doctor wants to give him, but the injections and the side effects are clear to him that he almost overdosed on this occasion on October 12th.
Yeah, so that doctor knows or should have known that this is a particularly susceptible patient. You cannot be putting him anywhere near this amount. He's going to overdose soon.
Yeah, and now they're getting, so the doctor is getting extremely, he has delusions of grandeur. He thinks this is like a cash cow for him, and he's like, well, we should do this legitimately. We maybe should open up a ketamine clinic. He's so excited about the money that he's making and a taste in his mouth. He actually texts Dr. Chavez, who's a conspirator, says to him, basically, he wants to open up a ketamine clinic. And Chavez says, interesting, as long as we are doing things on the up and up. We could start ASAP. All done legally without any shady stuff. Having them come to the clinic will ensure this.
Can I?
That's called a confession, by the way.
I was going to ask.
That's a confession.
Is it a good idea, RJ, to write in a text, as long as we're doing everything in the up and up, all done completely legally and fully with the advice of every legal channel? We are not breaking any laws. I swear we're not.
Right. So basically they're admitting right now what they're doing is illegal, and they're taking Matthew's life into risk. And in fact, they admit that they're doing this for money. On October 12th, 2023, one of Jasveen Sangha, who was the ketamine queen, her co-conspirator friend that was basically connected to Brooke Mueller, I guess. He said, I wouldn't do it if there wasn't a chance of me making some money for doing this. So he's texting this. So again, we have more confessions. We have more admissions. Oh, and by the way, you wanted to know who Sanga's getting it from? So Sanga's connection is the master chef and the scientist. And Sangha is known for Our Girl. So whenever you say we got our supply from Our Girl, that means it was from Sangha, the the ketamine queen. And ketamine queen is getting her stash from the master chef and the scientist, who, you know what? They may get arrested very soon. Sangha may be looking at 10, 15 years. And when they tell her, listen, just give us some names, we'll chop some years off, it's very hard to say no to that.
Yeah, people will talk when they're under pressure. And
they'll sing, they'll compose. And on October 24, 2023, that was the last time that Matthew Perry was alive. He had 6 shots of ketamine that night. And his last words were something to the effect of, give me a big one. In other words, give me a big shot. That's what he wanted at the end.
So he was really calling the shots here. It's good to remind ourselves of that. Because I know, and I'm not defending anybody. You're the defense attorney. I'm actually just shooting it with you and trying to figure it out. But it's hard to defend any of these people because there is some moral culpability here.
Yeah.
But I wonder, it's easy to make it look like a Wire episode now and a CSI episode if we put all their faces up and draw lines and say co-conspirator and all that. But then I like to kind of reset and be in the moment and try to imagine what they were at least, and I know they were delusional, but they were convincing themselves that they were probably not doing anything wrong. Like, this guy wants it. He's saying to them, look at me. I need this. That clinic won't give it to me. I'm really steel manning here and I'm working hard at it. I completely get that. I'm not trying to defend them, but just to put it out there in as ultra realistic a way as we can, and we can call BS on it as well. They were kind of thinking to themselves, we're doing what Mr. Perry wants, and he's calling the shots, and he knows himself better than anybody else. And man, this guy's a unique guy. I know the regulations are for your average Joe. This is Matthew Perry. He's on another level of high, another level of low, another level of depression, another dosage. We're just doing what he wants.
That won't work.
I know it won't. They're going away.
You know what I say to
I know it won't.
You know what I say to that? Guilty.
Guilty. I'm just wondering, were they in any way tell me, where did these...
I'll tell you what they're thinking. I've interviewed thousands of clients, which the street would call criminals, all right? And the mindset, I'm guessing, is if I interview these people, we didn't know he was going to die. We thought, he knew what he was doing. He was under control. We didn't know he was going to go in a tub that night with 6 injections.
Which is for sure true. Nobody thought he was going to die.
But it's foreseeable. Under the law, if it's foreseeable. Right. And by the way, because it's foreseeable, in my opinion, why are they not charging these individuals with voluntary manslaughter? I predicted on the last podcast that we did on Matthew Perry that it was homicide. This confirms it's homicide. Do you know why? Because count 1, which is 21 USC 846, conspiracy to commit ketamine, to distribute ketamine, resulting in death. That, by definition, Tony, is a homicide.
Is a felony murder rule?
No, because it's not. They don't have jurisdiction in felony. Well, if Matthew Perry was a postal worker, yes,
got it.
There would be a federal crime.
Okay, so it's state level.
If he was an agent of the IRS and they killed him, yes, on the job, of course.
So let's talk about the levels of charges here, because you're thinking it would have been higher. So we got first degree, second degree, then we get into involuntary, reckless, negligent, and all that.
I thought it was a Conrad Murray case where he basically, caused a death reckless disregard for human life, what's homicide, and this fits the bill. The question is not to get political. Is the district attorney in Los Angeles County going to step up and charge these people with homicide? I don't think so.
What's the highest charge so far among the 5?
Well, in this federal case,
Yes.
it's distribution of ketamine resulting in death, which is 100 years in prison and 20 years for...
Is that second-degree murder?
There's no murder charge. It's just conspiracy to distribute drugs resulting in death, which carries minimum of 10 years and up to 100 to life.
Wow.
Federal court charges you very, very strictly. They could pretty much get the same result as in a murder case in state court. What I mean by that, in state court, I could probably negotiate involuntary manslaughter. I probably could get them 11 years for killing Matthew Perry. All right, but in federal court, you're looking at a hell of a lot more time.
So
without even homicide charge.
You're getting a lot of time.
Yeah, without homicide charge.
But it hinges on this distribution charge. It's criminal distribution.
Yes.
You said causing a death.
That's it.
Not with intent, not
These are
with
called
foresight.
death-resulted cases, yeah.
Why are they not bringing some kind of murder charge along
Because
or some kind of homicide?
There's no jurisdiction.
Okay, help me.
It's not a federal employee. The government.
But help me understand, if somebody commits a federal crime,
Yeah.
which results in death, how
Yes.
can the federal government not bring charges for death?
So first you have to establish jurisdiction, meaning that
Yeah.
does the government have a stake in it? Do they
I would
have a
think-
dog in the fight?
Yeah, I get.
Matthew Perry is a famous actor. He's not an agent of the government. He's not related to the government. He has never worked for the government. He wasn't on a job for the government. If he was delivering newspapers, even delivering mail,
Yeah.
and he died of ketamine overdose caused by the ketamine queen, yeah, maybe the federal government could go after him for murder, but that's not what happened.
I'm with you.
The state government has jurisdiction. It happened on state soil at Pacific Palisades at his house. The drugs were received in Los Angeles County. They have jurisdiction to go after him just the way they went after Michael Jackson's doctor. They could do the same thing with Matthew Perry's doctor.
Got it.
And they should.
How come the federal government doesn't automatically get jurisdiction over you when you commit a federal crime?
They do. They have. They've
And they can't charge, but they can't try you for murder or homicide.
If you have to have jurisdiction for somebody with murder, because federal murder is very specific.
Got it.
It means you shot an IRS agent, DEA agent, FBI agent.
Okay.
It means you touched somebody in the Pentagon. Matthew Perry, no offense, great guy, but he's not that high in the level to be federal protection.
Really, so murder, this is interesting, is just really carved out of the federal system, thrown down to the state level. They're looking at the state officials saying, why don't you guys bring murder charges? It happened in your place.
Yeah, so let me give you another crazy example. If I walk into my wife that's cheating on me with her lover and I shoot the guy, and then the mailman walks in and I feel, hey, he's a witness, I'm invested, I shoot him too. You've got 2 murder cases, one state because I killed my wife's lover, and then the U.S. Postal Service, which is federal. So you have 2.
Right.
You have murder federal and you have murder state. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I want to add, correct me if I'm wrong, the first one you killed is better, more explainable than the second one.
Right.
Because it was a crime of passion.
And there's no
The
jurisdiction.
second one was covering your tracks. That's
right.
bad.
But do you understand why you can't
jurisdiction was different as well.
Yeah, the guy that's boinking my wife I can't go after him in federal court because he's not a federal agent. It wasn't like he was a FBI agent. I shot him, just a regular Joe. But when the mailman walked in, that guy's federal jurisdiction, so they'll prosecute me for that.
Absolutely. And I want your wife to know, who's a great neighbor of mine, that you're the one who brings these hypotheticals up all the time. I don't, and I have nothing to do with it whatsoever.
All right.
But interesting. So the highest charge, these are distribution charges, but do you expect state level actual homicide charges to come down?
I thought from the get-go this was a homicide. They confirmed, the federal government confirmed, and I'm going to show you. Okay, do you see that? What does that say? Count 1. Please read it to the audience. Just to highlight.
For my
and you're looking at the actual indictment straight from the federal government. What does it say?
But where do you want me to read? Just put your
highlight
finger on it. Just to highlight?
Yeah.
It says resulting in death.
Right. So they charged, in this case, crimes resulting in the death of Matthew Perry. That's the closest the federal government could come to charging for his death. The state government could be more direct and say, no, we're charging you with homicide just the way we do with Michael Jackson. Are they going to do that? I have no idea. That's a political question. I have no idea whether that's going to happen.
And let's talk about if they were to do it. Let's just imagine for 1 second. If the state was to come in and say, wow, this was really kind of close to murder, let's start charging.
Yeah.
It's not going to be first-degree murder.
No, it's going to be voluntary or
Can you take us down
murder.
the ladder? So first degree would be premeditated. You planned it out and you came in and you did it. Obviously, we're not dealing with that.
Right.
Second degree, what is it?
Reckless disregard for human life.
You should have known.
You knew or should have known what you were doing. Basically, another example of secondary murder is if you and I, we have a gun on the table and it's got one bullet in the chamber, all right? And we're talking about a revolver, which takes 6 bullets, right? So you flip that gun, you put it against your head, and you click.
Great example.
And you click it. You're like, I lived.
No, I put it against your head.
Now it's your turn. And you shoot and you die.
Right.
That could be second degree murder.
Right.
It could be because it's so dangerous.
Yes.
It's so dangerous.
And I'm saying, look, I obviously did not intend for the bullet to shoot.
There's no intent in second.
But I didn't because it's only 1 out of 6. It's probably not going to fire. I didn't intend it.
That's not intent.
Well, we're not first degree. So we're down to second, which is reckless disregard.
For human life. Now, voluntary manslaughter, and I'm going to read to you the Cal Crim, which is...
So are we coming one more level lower?
One level down.
Yeah.
So Cal Crim, which is the Cal Criminal Instructions to the Jury, states to find somebody guilty of voluntary manslaughter, defendant in the case must have committed an act that caused the death of another person, number one. So check, Matthew Perry died.
Causation.
Matthew died.
Yeah.
And when Matthew died, the person unlawfully intended to kill somebody. Or the person intentionally committed an act that caused the death of another person. And the natural consequences of that act were dangerous to human life. And at the time, he knew the act was dangerous. So the doctor fits the bill.
So I'm hearing intentional act that's either unlawful or extremely dangerous with knowledge.
Right. So you could get the doctor based on he either knew or should have known.
Is this negligent?
This is voluntary manslaughter.
Voluntary, got it.
So negligence would be involuntary.
That's another level
That's
down.
one level before.
We're now at level 4.
Involuntary manslaughter could be I Botox your face and then you get a heart attack and die. I do it negligently. That could be involuntary manslaughter. Do you understand?
Yeah. It's much less culpable.
It wouldn't rise to the level of secondary murder. Nobody knows people die from Botox.
The intent is not there.
But ketamine is a dangerous drug. And now you're injecting it, and now you're a doctor, so the law says you either knew or should have known when you injected Matthew Perry, the guy was going to die. And when you left the drugs with Iwamasa, you should have known that that was against protocol. You should have monitored him, had the equipment in case he had cardiac arrest. All of that is reckless. So in my opinion, Tony, this guy could go down for voluntary manslaughter easy.
If the state brings the charges. But
why wouldn't they? I don't even know why.
Why should they when he's going to potentially face 100 years in Fed?
Well, if I was a DA, I would do it for media purposes, for just propaganda to get me reelected. Say, I was the guy that prosecuted the Matthew Perry murderers. I don't want to look soft. Yeah. I would go after him strong, be like, and sending a message saying, don't do this again. Why isn't the DA of Los Angeles, maybe we should cut this out, maybe it's getting political, but you know, in my opinion, there's definitely the right to charge him with voluntary manslaughter.
I'm confused about something with regards to ketamine. Is ketamine legal or illegal? I mean, we're in California. Is it
Ketamine
legal?
is illegal. It's only legal to be used in therapeutic microdoses for, my understanding, for depression.
And PTSD or something like that, or not even?
I'm not sure about PTSD.
So
I know
this is sort of a loophole, sort of a little carve out that California has.
No, it's under the federal. It's a Schedule 3 drug under the Federal Drug Administration, and it could be used. Remember, anytime you use a drug, it has to be approved by the federal government. I don't know if you know.
Schedule 3, so it's way down there compared to pot.
I don't even know if you know. They try to make ecstasy, MDMA, legalized recently for PTSD.
I've heard good things about MAPS and other organizations.
And they said no. They said, no, you can't do it.
They kicked it back for more study.
Yeah, exactly. They kicked it back for more study. But ketamine is used. It's at that stage where it is used for therapy for depression. Good. Microdoses.
And I hope
Microdoses.
I hope MDMA will be as well as psilocybin at some point, because all of those seem to be indicating positive results.
And the same thing for mushrooms. They just reject.
That's
They rejected it also.
Yeah. Well, they said let's do another round of
Right.
double-blind study.
Right.
Which is probably okay.
But ketamine has passed the point of mushrooms and MDMA in the sense that it is being used in clinics.
So it's shown positive results in clinical applications.
No, I can't.
It seems like it.
It seems like it. I can't delve into that. I'm not an expert in that, but based on the fact that the government's letting you use it, makes me believe that. But I don't know. But nonetheless, it's still addicting.
What if these doctors are convicted and then 5 years down the line, ketamine's legalized for clinical application? Could they say like, what the hell?
Because at the time it's not retroactive. It's not retroactive. So you can't just say at the time it was legal, therefore I should be forgiven. Because the crime happens at a point in time when the law was enacted.
Yeah.
So if you committed a crime, then you do the time. Now, you could make an argument if it's attenuated, which means if it's like 20 years down the line, you could make an argument, well, my client hasn't committed a crime, is of advanced age, he's an older gentleman. Can you please forgive him and not prosecute him? Lawyers like me could do that. We can negotiate.
You're appealing to mercy at that point.
Yeah, and that's a strategy you might want to do. You might want to say, kick the case down, because by then, nobody's going to give a crap. You know what I'm saying? But right now, while the case is still hot, you can be prosecuted. And they do prosecute you while they strike the iron while it's hot.
Right.
When the iron gets cold, different story. So the strategy would be, for me, I would delay until the case gets so old that we can negotiate something with the prosecutor and say, look, that was an old law. Don't go after my client now.
Right. You know what I'm struck by in this particular case? How much of the evidence is text? What should people know about just text messages? Like
no, nothing on your phone is protected. Even Signal, which I believe that there are many people, drug dealers, my clients use Signal. That is not protected. Nothing is protected. You want to commit?
Is that the NSA? Is that state governments? Who's accessing Signal and our texts and our emails?
Anybody. I could subpoena your records right now. You do a Signal. Let's say I'm suing you. Mm-hmm. Let's just say I'm suing you for defamation, and you said something naughty about me, but I know in a text message you had intent to do that to harm me.
Yeah, like I told somebody else, watch what I'm about to do to RJ.
Right, watch what I'm about to do. I know it's not real. Mm-hmm. I could easily subpoena those records and get those records easily.
What if I deleted it on my iPhone?
So what? It's just off your iPhone. Doesn't mean that the server doesn't have it.
Right. It's in the cloud, right?
It's in the cloud. Now,
could I delete it off the cloud somehow?
No. But there is a shelf life to the cloud. There is a shelf life. It's not forever because data gets kicked out. Just like the internet, if something is on the news, on page 1, 20 years from now, it's not going to be on page 1. It's going to be on page 1,000.
Right.
And eventually it will fall off and you'll have a very difficult time finding it. Mm-hmm. So it's like microfiche. Do you remember microfiche back in the day? We used to scan little documents. So it'll become like...
I've had to use it not that long ago, believe it or not. So some records at the city offices and stuff are very, very old, and they're just microfiches the only way. You put it on a magnifying glass with a light, and you just like look through old transparent records.
Well, that's what the internet's going to look like, old internet. So internet's going to not be able to store everything, but if you commit a crime, the government's going to be able to get you. Why? Because it's fresh, right? You commit the crime, it probably happened within a year. It will be on the cloud within a year, even 2 years, even maybe 3 years.
So if
20 years, not so much.
If you texted incriminating stupid things like, hey, we should all delete our messages right now, that literally is sitting somewhere. It's going to get subpoenaed. It's going to show up in court against you, right?
I'm going to tell you, you know how they call Matthew Perry moron? They're the true morons. Because they were texting their crimes, okay? Matthew Perry's not a moron. He's just a desperate addict.
No, he's a victim here.
These guys are morons because they are the criminals and they think they're getting away with it, and they're so stupid that they're telling each other to delete it, almost as though it's like a James Bond movie. Like, if you delete it, everything is going to be gone forever. Give me a break.
You know what they probably told themselves is that, sadly, they're like, look, man, if we don't give it to him, somebody else is going to give it to him. And I know that's not a justification. That's probably what they fed themselves to go to sleep at night. Yeah, like, why wouldn't I make the 50 G's? Somebody else is going to make it. But it's so short-sighted and so dumb.
By the way, you got to add to that. Like, we really didn't think he was going to die.
Of course they didn't.
We were hoping we'd wane him off slowly.
Yeah.
And then we were hoping we'd open a clinic and, use that Matthew Perry as an example of, like, helping somebody. Sure.
So they did have this rosy visual of how it could end up, and then
Right.
they probably did appreciate a little bit of the risk of, hey man, if all shit hits the fan, like this could also go real south.
You know,
And they rolled the dice.
they rolled the dice, and they did it in the name of money because they thought that he had a lot of money and he's willing to pay what he's going to pay.
So they did it in the name of money, and they did it risking somebody else's life. I think that's the messed up part here.
And according to the indictment, it says that on October 28th, that because Matthew Perry was injected with multiple doses of ketamine, it eventually resulted in his death and caused serious bodily injury. So these doctors, they knew at some point.
It's scummier the more I think about it.
It's very bad.
Everybody we're all faced with, I think, money-making opportunities. Some are this way, some are that. Try this, try that. And then you would have to, in estimating the return on investment here, you're like, I'm going to make some money, not even that much. You have to put this countervailing point of like, literally someone could die. And this person seems pretty high risk to die. They've already overdosed in my care. I've witnessed an overdose. I see that they're susceptible to abusing the amount. You'd have to weigh that and go, man, I'm really rolling the dice on this celebrity's life.
Yeah, but you have also remember that these people have delusions of grandeur. They're texting each other thinking that this is going to parlay into something beautiful. Like on October 2nd, the Plasencia met with Matthew Perry, and he gave him a shot, and he thought because, Matthew Perry was feeling better that day, he texted his co-conspirator Chavez and says, if today goes well, we may have repeat business. So they're thinking that this is the introduction of a
cash cow.
Not only that, but they're thinking, hey, this we could parlay this into a real business. We could turn it into something good. This is our calling.
This is it. This is our moment.
This is our moment in time.
Eminem said you only get one shot.
Yeah, and why not use Matthew Perry to start our business? And the next thing you know, he died. We effed up.
Big fail.
Big fail. We got to delete our messages. What were we thinking? And now reality sets in, and you're thinking, oh crap. Why did we do all that? Why did I listen to the ketamine queen? And now I'm looking at 10 years to life in prison.
Fail on many levels. My kids would say L.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what they say. They literally would be like L.
Yeah.
What do you think? How many years are people going away? Who's in the worst position? The doctors?
The doctor broke a fiduciary duty. A doctor has a duty of
Hippocratic oath.
not only, well, by law, it's called a fiduciary duty. I owe a fiduciary duty
Yeah.
as a lawyer to you.
Yeah.
Because we have the law.
You have to put the person's best interest.
The law recognizes that we have certain powers as doctors and lawyers that most people are susceptible to, that we could take advantage of and easily take advantage of, but we're taught not to do that. And we're going to talk about that on another podcast, how a famous lawyer took advantage of his client, stole money. This doctor took advantage of Matthew Perry, not stole money, but gouged him for payments so that they could have a lucrative business. And these payments, by the way, these vials, they're $12 each. They bought them. Guess how much they sold them back to Matthew Perry for? $2,000 a vial.
So from $12
to $2,000 a vial.
to $2,000.
Yeah, because he could afford it. Because
Yeah.
Matthew Perry could, and to Matthew Perry, in our mind, it's like nothing. And
Right. This is part of what upset the balance of their own ethical consideration here. The money it just blinded them. Of
course.
It blinded them. We're sitting here in LA, not far from where this happened. How many celebrities do you think in this town are in this boat? I mean, do we have this can't be it's not just Matthew Perry.
I'll count it down for you right now. The people that I know: Elvis, Anna Nicole Smith, Michael Jackson, Matthew Perry. I'm sure there's anybody that's taking medication from a doctor.
These are huge names, but these are sadly just the ones that happen to actually go that 1% too far and die. But how many
Heath
of
Ledger.
them? How many of them are doing it and not dying that we don't know about and we'll never know about?
That's what they bank on. These doctors bank on the fact that most people don't die. It's a very small percentage. I mean, there was a high chance that Matthew Perry wouldn't have died. My understanding from reading the report, what contributed to his death was the jacuzzi that he was in, the heat. Otherwise, if he was laying on his couch, he would have just knocked out. He'd been fine. So he went to cardiac arrest because there was a combination that culminated in his death.
I'm trying to see below the surface.
Yeah.
Are we just looking at the tip of the iceberg here? It's one guy that we all loved, amazing, famous celebrity Matthew Perry. But are there tens of thousands of people in Los Angeles right here, 5 minutes from us, who are abusing ketamine or MDMA or any other thing that's currently black market. Like, how big is this black market? Like, these two doctors are about to go down. Are there hundreds more?
Probably. If you have money out there, supply and demand, right? Economics. If you have a demand for it, a high demand for it, and you got the supply for it, there's always going to be somebody that's going to be willing to give that demand.
There's like a massive black market right here, and we don't really know about it because nobody talks about it. It's just sort of like under
by the way,
the
for
table.
Michael Jackson, he was getting Demerol and all these other medications, and they were giving it prescriptions to other people that didn't exist. That was happening for many years. They were giving him propofol in Germany on the tour. They had anesthesiologists literally flying to Germany, to Czech Republic, wherever Michael was, so that he could get his sleep, so he could dance during the day to the fullest extent. So this is not something that's new. It's been something that's been going on for many, many years. I would date it back to Elvis Presley. Elvis, apparently when he died, if you took a look at his medicine cabinet, had 1 million over-the-counter medications that he shouldn't have had. And why did he have it? Because he demanded it from his doctors, just the way that Matthew Perry demanded it from these black market doctors.
The only thing I could add to that is that the should have had or shouldn't have had part is difficult.
Yeah.
Because it's just some substances are legally outlawed, others are allowed. I'm sitting here drinking scotch. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a pain remover. It's kind of like a medication, right? I mean,
it's a depressant.
It's doing a lot. I mean, it's psychologically, physiologically, it affects you. But yet that's legal, but then other substances aren't. So, and then when you look in the history of drug laws in this country and you look at Hearst and you look at what really underlied the outlawing of many of these drugs, it was sort of like there was racism involved. There was like anti-counterculture movements involved. It was like fighting the Vietnam sort of like draft hesitancy. There was so many things where it's hard to sit back and go, well, this one's not allowed and this one is, because it's a little bit, I'm suspicious of why that is with these various substances.
Your suspicions could be correct, but the bottom line is, legally speaking,
true.
If you're going to get involved into drug administration and distribution, then you got to do it by the rules until the government says you could do it otherwise.
Do you remember Blow?
Yeah.
Do you remember Johnny Depp in court? I love that line. Yeah. He goes like, "Your Honor, I brought some imaginary plants past an imaginary line." Right. Do you remember what she says?
She said, "That's very nice."
She goes, "Oh, that's great. Unfortunately for you,
it's against the law.
The line you passed was real, and the plants were illegal." So.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. I mean, that's what it is. And if you think about it, there's logical reason for that, because if you make it legal for Dr. Plasencia to go around injecting people with ketamine, then you're going to always get somebody abusing that authority with no oversight whatsoever. And people are going to die. And
regulation's important.
And people are going to die, yes. Yeah. And Matthew Perry was at a clinic, by the way. Don't forget. He got kicked out of the clinic because he wanted more, and they said, we're not going to give you more. So he went to his assistant who made some phone calls, and then the chain of command went up to the Queen ketamine.
And it's funny because we're talking about an actual regulated substance. It's semi-legal.
Yes.
We're not even talking about cocaine or ecstasy.
Well, Adderall is also illegal, and it has...
illegal or legal?
Adderall is legal if it's prescribed.
And Adderall's legal.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a legal version of speed.
It's methamphetamine, yeah. But it's given in doses and it's monitored. So there are illegal drugs that you could use as long as it's monitored. We could talk about another podcast why it's fair, not fair. That's beside the point.
Right.
But the point is, if you're doing it, you should do it legally. If you're a doctor, you should not be injecting somebody with a massive amount of ketamine. And additionally, you shouldn't leave Matthew Perry alone by himself with the syringes. And additionally, if you're going to do that, my God, have the guy on speed call to call you up and say, something's wrong, I'll be there in 10 minutes, or have somebody there.
My last question on this, you might have more, is that some of these defendants pled guilty, some didn't.
Yes, 3 did.
Who's better off?
The 3 that pled off are in the better position. So Matthew Perry's Iwamasa, his personal assistant pled guilty. Chavez pled guilty, basically flipping
one of the
doctor's
doctors.
flipping on a doctor. And
boy, are you screwed when you're the doctor that didn't flip.
Yeah. And
Quite a prisoner's dilemma there.
Yeah, and Fleming also, another guy flipped. So you got 3 against 2. But they want the 2 players.
The other 2 are like, could I flip now?
They can't. It's two. They're the 2 big players. So they're taking down the ketamine queen because she killed somebody before. She killed somebody by the name of Corey McClory. And she knew this because the brother texted her and said, you killed my brother with your ketamine overdose. And she actually Google research, ketamine could be found in your blood system. So she was checking it out. So she knows, she was on notice that she killed somebody before.
So her Google searches are being used against her.
Of course. And
should everybody be aware, and this is not a show about giving advice to criminals, but I think it's nice for citizens to understand where your privacy ends.
There's no privacy. You get on the internet, it's being recorded, period. The only thing that I could tell you that has a buffer in it as far as the government not finding out, again, I'm not advertising for Apple. I need to disclose I'm a major shareholder in Apple, but Apple Computer...
Me too, I'm a fan.
So Apple Computer will block the government from seizing subpoenas. They did that with the San Bernardino case and the terrorism case when a terrorist went out there and he shot and killed some people in Target. They tried to break into the iPhone. Tim Cook, who's the CEO of Apple, said, no, we're not doing that. So if you're using your phone, make sure it's Apple, make sure you're on it. But again, that's still discoverable.
Can
they
I just
still
say,
subpoena it.
To my understanding, we're at the place now that even though Tim Cook did resist disclosing, he didn't even resist. He just said, we can't actually break. He said we can't break the encryption.
I think he said we won't.
It's that good. I'm pretty sure he said we actually can't. I could be wrong.
And then Mossad breaks
But guess what? The secret... intelligence can.
Yeah.
And they
Mossad did. I think it was Israeli. I think it was Black Cube or somebody did.
But they're probably just subbed out by some U.S. higher up anyway.
The moral of the story is if somebody wants to get in your phone, they can.
They can.
It's just a matter of the buffer, how much buffer you have.
Yeah.
So it's completely idiotic to go on Google and Google things just to find things out. I mean, if you're really a smart criminal, you wouldn't do it on your computer. You go to the library, make sure somebody else is logged on.
Find someone you don't like. Start Googling on their computer.
Yeah.
This is not advice.
I'm not giving advice. But if you want to be clever,
drinking scotch.
If you want to be clever about it, you don't do it on your computer. It's idiotic to do it on a computer. Take your friend's phone, for Christ's sake. But
crazy.
But that's what these people did. These idiots, these morons, these real morons were the ones that were texting each other saying we should do this, we should do that, and it's going to bite them in the foot.
Matthew Perry, rest in peace, man. I mean, these guys are going to go down.
Yeah, I think the doctor's going to get for easy 10 years.
They're going to rethink.
The ketamine queen is going to get probably 10 years. I'd be shocked if they get less than 10 years each. I think they're going to get 10 years, and the doctor's going to lose his license, rightfully so. He's going to probably have to pay fines and fees and all this stuff. I mean, he's just screwed.
The sad thing here, I'm being way too pessimistic, but I don't think there's a law or regulation that would have saved Matthew Perry's life because he was on that trajectory to get what he wanted come hell or high water. Like, he got the stuff he wanted from this team of people. If it wasn't this team, it would have been the next. And if it wasn't the next, it would have been the next because he probably wielded that much power, influence, and money. So I just don't think any level of illegality or regulation is going to save a life like that. And that's sad to me. That's sad.
You're right. Matthew Perry's life probably was on a trajectory where you couldn't save it because he would have found a way to get that ketamine.
He's too powerful. He would have died.
Powerful in the sense that he has connections and he has money. And there's always an audience out there willing to do what it takes to get you what you want. So it's sad to say yes. And I think the Doors singer, also Jim Morrison, same way. He died, overdose. He was doing a lot of Percocets, opiates, and all these things. If these singers really want to find the drugs, they'll find the drugs.
He seemed happier.
Yeah, but you can send a message, which is what Martin Estrada is doing. He's sending a message saying, okay, we're letting all the drug dealers know that you will be held accountable. We're going to come after you, so keep that in mind. Now, people are watching the Matthew Perry trial. And if they could avoid just one drug dealer selling ketamine to one person or two, by this indictment alone, they saved 2, 3, 4 lives at least, maybe many, many lives. Because now those drug dealers, a couple of them are thinking, you know what, F this. I'm not going to do this for 40 grand. Look what happened to Matthew Perry and these guys. I'm going to make 50 grand and serve 20 years in jail. Ain't worth it. So hopefully this does send a great message to all the drug dealers to think twice before they start taking advantage of these unwitting participants, as we call them.
Let's hope so.